Welcome to my mommy's podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by Genexa, a company pioneering over-the-counter medicine with a full line of homeopathic and regular over-the-counter medicines that work without the harmful dyes, additives, artificial sweeteners that are in many medicines. Founded by two dads on a mission to find better products for their own kids, Genexa uses a patented system to create their formulas without harmful additives or preservatives while maintaining the same active ingredients. Plus, their formula are all free of common allergens, which is really important in today's world. One example, they have a formula called Heartburn Fix. It works just like many over-the-counter heartburn relief products to provide fast relief for heartburn and indigestion, but without the dyes and preservatives that some other products contain. I wish I'd known about this one when I was pregnant with my first child, but I'm so glad that products like this are finally available. They also have other products for everything from sleep to colds to leg cramps and everything in between. You can shop their full line of organic and non-GMO medicines by going to genexa.com/wellnessmama and using the code wellness for 20% off of your order. Again, that's genexa.com/wellnessmama with the code wellness in all caps for 20% off. This episode is brought to you by Organifi, and I'm so excited to finally tell you about them because here's a confession. I have known about Organifi for a really long time, and even though so many of my friends and experts I trust rave about them, I never tried their stuff until recently because I thought, first of all, how can it actually be that good? Well, I tried it, and it turns out that not only is it that good, it's better than I expected. Organifi has green juice, red juice, which is an antioxidant red drink, and it's delicious, and a golden milk turmeric drink, along with a plant-based protein. Everything they have is completely organic, and they all actually taste good, unlike a lot of other green drinks and protein powders. I've especially been loving their red juice lately, especially at this time of year for immunity. It tastes amazing, and it has a blend of antioxidants from strawberries, cranberries, blueberries, pomegranates, and they also add in beets, cordyceps, reishi, rhodiola, and a lot more. So this particular blend is formulated to increase energy, boost metabolism, and reduce factors that lead to aging. Their green juice is minty and delicious, and I noticed it has almost 800 5-star reviews. You can check out those two products along with their whole suite of products and save 20% just by being a listener of the Wellness Mama podcast. Go to Organifi.com/wellnessmama. That's ORGANIFI.com/wellnessmama and use the code wellness20 for 20% off. Hello and welcome to the Wellness Mama podcast. I'm Katie from wellnessmama.com, and I'm here with my friend Connie Zack, who is the founder of Sunlighten, to answer all of your questions. I get a lot of questions from you guys about sauna use and the differences between types of saunas and what are the actual benefits that are backed by science. Connie and her husband started Sunlighten in their basement in 2002, and today they have some of the best saunas in the entire world. They develop, design, and retail infrared saunas, and the company's unique patented far infrared technology, and more recently, their 3-in-1 infrared light therapies, which we'll talk about both of those. They're really revolutionizing the sauna market. And in this episode, like I said, we're going to delve into the benefits of sauna therapy, what things like heat shock proteins are, and how we can all maximize the benefits of sauna use. So Connie, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited to jump in and to talk to you about this. I know that you are really an expert on this topic and you have many years of experience. And sauna use is something that's been happening around the world for many, many years. There's a long historical history of use and of benefits. So I'd love if you could start there, kind of explaining the history of saunas and then also the difference between the traditional saunas and now the infrared saunas that we have access to.
Would love to. Yeah, there has been around for many, many years. And I was introduced to infrared technology from my brother, who was chronically ill, and he suffered greatly from mercury toxicity and just heavy toxic burden. And it was his dentist who had done some research, this is 20 years ago, on infrared, and said, there's a big, huge difference between just regular heat and infrared. And a lot of the early research, this was 20 years ago, has been shown that if you can penetrate the body you can purify it naturally and get some of this mercury and toxins out of your body. And so that's when I was introduced. I saw my brother go from being on his deathbed to being healthy as a result of infrared technology. And that's when our company was born.
Wow. So, well, first of all, let's establish what is infrared. I think it's actually technically light, right? But also heat. Can you kind of explain what infrared is and how it's kind of interacting with the body?
Correct. And I'll also explain your first question a little bit better as far as the difference between traditional heat and infrared heat. Why don't we start there? So traditional heat is hot air and has a little bit of infrared, but most of it is convectional heat that you can feel in the air. And so you're getting hot because the air is hot. And so you're still sweat, but it's surface sweat, and it's not, the heat's not really going into the body. It's just heating the air. Infrared is a spectrum, and we can go as deep as you want into the spectrum because that's my space. But I'll just touch on it lightly here, and we can, as deep as you want to go, I can take the audience. But in the infrared spectrum, there's 3 different wavelengths of light. There's a far infrared, mid infrared, and near infrared. And they all 3 operate differently, and they all 3 have different tipping points for effectiveness, which we can talk about later. But specifically, let's talk about the far infrared piece, because that's what my brother was introduced to, and that was our first exposure to this spectrum of light and the magical healing properties. And the far infrared part of the spectrum is the one that goes the deepest into the body. And how it works is you bypass all of the convectional heat. This is what Sunlighten specializes in, is taking out the non-healing heat, the UV rays, and all of that extra stuff that the sun gives, and just focusing on almost 100% of the tipping point far infrared. When I say tipping point, it's a wavelength, right? And so any level of energy has a tipping point where it becomes transformational versus just far infrared. And that's what we have done in all of our products. And then, of course, we patented it to protect ourselves and our customers. And the far infrared specifically is what increases the core temperature. It gives the body a natural fever without disease. That fever, that increase of core temperature, is what leads to the healing benefits and leads to the transformation, leads to, for my brother specifically, the removal of the toxin, specifically mercury, that was trapped in his body for so long, that was leading him to be so ill.
That's super fascinating. It reminds me of last year I had the chance to study in Switzerland at a biological medicine clinic, and they have a procedure called full body hyperthermia, where they're essentially, they're doing sauna, but to an extreme degree, and they're having someone's head removed. So similar to like your solo sauna unit, so that the brain doesn't get too hot. And they had actually people under medical supervision with a rectal thermometer and an IV for hydration. And these are people with blood infections or severe heavy metals. And their purpose is to raise the core body temperature. Both they're inducing sweat, which, like you mentioned, is helping remove those things from the body as well. But they're finding that increasing the core body temperature to a high degree and getting the person to have a fever of 103 or 104 can actually go a long way toward killing some of these infections in the blood. And it seems like adults have harder times actually getting a high fever. Kids can get them pretty easily, which is wonderful. Actually, there's a lot of evidence we should not be bringing down fevers because they serve such a beneficial purpose. Have you seen that in your research as well about the benefits of the body actually being that hot?
Absolutely. That and we did so 2 things on that. To touch on Switzerland, that biological clinic, I would believe, is the same one that we're working with. Sunlighten is working with in many different ways, where they use our Sunlighten Solo that has the head out, right? So the head's not in, but then they're also adding on the other 2 wavelengths, the 3-in-1 product as well, that has the mid infrared around you as well as near infrared LEDs they're doing that as well because there's benefits of those two wavelengths adding to the synergies of the far infrared increasing the core. So that's a different topic. But when you said that, I was just thinking about, I was just recently in Belgium and we were working with that clinic in Switzerland, and they're having terrific results with our products. So the second, as far as the hyperthermia, absolutely. We did with our Sunlighten Solo product, let's see, that was probably, we're looking at, probably 15, 16, maybe even 17 years ago, we did that exact study with a rectal thermometer with our heating technology and measured the core temperature over 30 minutes with the Solo. That was before we introduced our heated pad that goes underneath. And I know that you would probably even get a greater increase with that, but we didn't have that at the time. So we just did it with the Sunlighten Solo, and we showed an increase in 3 degrees in less than 30 minutes. And then what's great, Katie, is even when they were taken out, the core temperature stayed elevated. And so you can see the benefit of how the wavelength stays with you and it continues to provide that healing benefit after you get out. So Dr. Rachel West, again, about 13, 14 years ago, introduced Sunlighten to some research that she was doing on using our products specifically with kids with autism. And so showing that when you increase that core temperature and you keep it elevated, and like you said, you let that happen naturally and you don't try and fight to bring it down too quickly, then you can see a removal in harmful toxins. And there's, a lot of research showing that kids with autism have mercury and different types of things inside their body. And if you can remove that, and you can, then, you can potentially notice a benefit. And she has really done a lot of research on the core temperature and the hyperthermia benefits, specifically with kids. And when I had my children, I completely subscribed to that philosophy of, as painful it is as a mom to watch your kid have a fever, it's so painful, but knowing that if they can fight it on their own, that's the best thing for them. And then ourselves as adults, if we can change our body and consistently provide healing heat that's going to increase our core temperature and keep it elevated, then we can keep ourselves from getting harmful diseases, as well as transform if we have any adverse conditions as we sit here today.
Absolutely. And I think there's so many fun things to unpack there. But I think for moms, that's such helpful perspective. You're so right. It's so hard to see your child suffer with a fever, and it's so easy to want to just bring the fever down and give them Tylenol. But the data we're seeing right now is super fascinating. And I'm sure you've seen it too, about how high fevers in childhood are actually correlated with lower risk of certain diseases in adulthood. And it seems that there's almost like an immune forming or strengthening effect, which makes sense when we look at a fever as one of the body's natural defense mechanisms and not just something that we need to make go away. And that's, so to make sure I'm understanding, so the far, near, and mid infrared, they all are able to penetrate the body, but they affect cells in different ways. So is that correct? And how deeply can they penetrate the body?
Yeah, so each wavelength penetrates differently. And so as a result, because it's affecting the body in different parts, then it has different benefits. So the far that we were just talking about goes the deepest and gets that increase in core temperature we just talked about. So the results of hyperthermia we just discussed, are extensive, and they really, really can help the body restore itself to, its healthy state by removing the toxic elements. And so many people have conditions that really are related to toxic overload. And if they would just remove those elements, then they would, purify the body. So that's the beautiful part of the Sunlighten, the far infrared. And what we patented is giving almost 100% of the perfect amount as well as frequency of that wavelength. Because each wavelength, Katie, has a spectrum. So there's a spectrum of infrared, and then with far, mid, and near, there's a spectrum of that category too. And if you're not in the right part of the spectrum, you're not getting the benefits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So that's the far. So then there's the mid, same story. It has to be within a particular frequency. And that wavelength is hotter than the far. The far is the coolest of the three. The mid is a little bit hotter in temperature and does not go as deep. So its benefit specifically is for the joints and the tissues. And my personal favorite benefit that it provides is reducing inflammation and leaving the body in a better state of recovery, specifically for people who want to exercise or people who have had bad, knee pain or joint pain or back pain, that type of inflammation. The far isn't going to help with that as much as the mid because of the way it concentrates on the body. And the near is the hottest of the three, so hot that you can't receive the transformational near, which is around 880 nanometers. You can't receive that by heat. It would burn you. So what we have done is we've taken that and we have converted it to invisible LEDs, and they are extremely effective at reducing pain at the very surface. So for like your feet and the back of your neck, your spine, like that part of the body, it's very, very effective. And I have lots of personal stories myself where I've used our LEDs. The other thing it is very effective with the near infrared is the skin and the repair of the skin. There's lots of studies on wound healing as well as, transformation with the cells as far as accelerating the cell turnover and reducing fine lines and wrinkles. It's excellent at restoring the skin and repairing the skin. When I talk about the skin, I also like to mention that the far is really great for making the skin glow because you're removing the impurities in your body. So it's nice because when you combine the different wavelengths together, you get all of the benefits. You get like this glow from the inside out as well as on the surface.
That makes sense. And also, I found it fascinating when I was researching this. Infrared light obviously occurs in nature. These are things that we get from the sun. Is that correct?
Correct. Everybody needs infrared to exist. The difference is how the quantity within each wavelength is where the magic starts to happen. So just general infrared comes from the sun, but then when you break it down on the different wavelengths and then you filter out all of the noise of the non-healing stuff and you just give the beautiful healing properties and you give the maximum amount of each wavelength, that's where the beauty and the transformation happens. And that's what Sunlighten is known for. And that's what I'm most passionate about is bringing efficient healing properties to the market and leaving the world a healthier place.
Absolutely. And I know that's one thing I've researched quite a bit recently is just, obviously we all are aware of the rise in all these modern diseases and chronic diseases. And there's a lot of factors that come into play there, of course, with increased toxicity and our diets have changed, but we're also just not spending as much time outside. A lot of us can't with jobs and school, and we're not getting that natural light that we need. And we're not getting exposure to all those spectrum. So I feel like in today's world, we do have to be more proactive to face all these things that we're constantly being bombarded with. And so things like sauna use are an easy way to kind of rebound and get some of those benefits without having to spend hours and hours outside or, things that would be difficult with our schedule. And when it comes to saunas, obviously they typically induce sweat, which people think of as a byproduct. But in my research, at least, I found there's a tremendous amount of benefits to sweating as well. Have you found that as well?
Yes. Sweating is something that it seems a lot of times people are like, ooh, gross, you know, and they tend to like shy away from it, when it is really critical for the body to be healthy. And, you know, if you're not actively doing something to sweat, you know, you'll notice that you will have, you know, less energy and feel fatigued and, you know, as a result, not be as healthy. I will say though, you know, any sweat is good, but there is a big difference between, you know, sweating in a Sunlighten sauna versus sweating, you know, after exercise. And it's extra healthy and extra beneficial for you to get that deep cellular increase of core temperature sweat. And you'll actually notice, Katie, I don't know if you notice this on your own body, but I notice on mine, the sweat beads, like I ran this morning, for example, and my sweat is totally different in the morning when I go for a run than in the evening when I use my Sunlighten sauna. It is oilier, it's larger, I accumulate more sweat in certain parts of my body when I'm using my Sunlighten unit versus when I'm just sweating, you know, because the air is hot. And both are good, but removing toxins comes from the Sunlighten infrared versus sweating, you know, from going outside.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's so many benefits that get overlooked, like I said, because I think we think of sweat as just a byproduct of exercise or of heat. But the recent research is seeming to show that, like you mentioned, the oiliness, that both like oil-based compounds and water-based compounds and minerals can all come out of the skin through sweat. And because of that, they're finding we can actually push out things like BPA, and you mentioned heavy metals, all kinds of things can leave our body through sweat.
Right. And there's some great research, recent ones that I've seen on mercury being removed. Well, we know that from all of ours, from our Sunlighten research, but there's additional on some of the harmful, like oxycodone and aluminum, arsenic. I know that there's BPA that's being excreted in sweat, and that when BPA is excreted in sweat, it's in higher concentrations via sweat than it is by the urine. So that's a really important finding, as well as the overall feeling of the body after having that experience. You feel lighter, more energy, and yes, you know, it's nice to go to the doctor and get the results that, you know, you have less of the toxins, but really it's all about how you feel, you know, and having that restorative effect of, wow, I just feel great and I have so much energy and I feel lighter and my head is clearer. I mean, that's one of the things I notice is just that removal of the fog or the mind chatter, or just that, you know, overwhelming effect that just general life can have. You know, when you consistently use the Sunlighten unit, you find that your head is clear and you have more energy and you feel, you know, like you can go tackle anything.
Absolutely. And I've heard from some people, maybe you can solve this mystery for me,
Sure.
who after starting sauna use, their skin itches for a while. And I wondered if it's a byproduct of these things leaving the skin, or if there's something that people can do who are experiencing that when they start with a sauna. Any idea why that's happening?
You know, everybody is different. I mean, our advice always, what we find that is people don't adequately hydrate themselves. And so a lot of times, like their skin may get like blotchy, and, you know, they may find that they get, you know, some kind of gross stuff removed. But the real way to help that process is through adequate hydration. So that would be my one tip. But I know that, you know, I worked with so many doctors over the years that have told me stories about like smokers who stop smoking and then they use Sunlighten's product and their skin, like for a while, you know, has that kind of yellowish, brownish hew to it until they kind of get everything out of their body. I've heard stories from her local doctor here about firefighters who come in and they're using our product, and because she has it in her clinic, and the noticing a different, like the smell in the air just from the removal of all of the harmful impurities that they have ingested into their body. So all of those things can cause, itchiness and rash and everything to the skin because they're coming out of the body. And that's just part of the process. And like I said, my tip is really making sure that you're adequately hydrating before and after, because this is therapy. This is a healing process, and you want to make sure that you drink enough water to aid in the process.
Got it. That seems like such a great point. And I know anecdotally, some people say that things like chlorophyll might help a little bit, or vitamin C. Maybe there's probably a personal experimentation aspect, but that makes sense. If the body has a larger toxic load, it may take a while to equalize from that. And we've kind of now gone into how these different types of the wavelengths can penetrate the body. I'd love to now go deep on the scientifically backed benefits of sauna use, because I know I've seen studies that support it for cardiovascular health, for, you mentioned, joint health, but there's a lot of different studies. So can you take us through some of the documented benefits of sauna use?
Yes, of course. So the first one just which is like one of the oldest studies out there, is the one we did on the core temperature. So that's significant, where we show with our product, we increase the core temperature in only 30 minutes by 3 degrees, and then we kept it elevated. So that's a significant result, and we talked about why that's beneficial. Then at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, they did a study with the Sunlighten Solo. Again, this was before the pad. So it's even, I only mention that because it's extra impressive, because the pad has 4 additional heaters, and this was without that. So with only 5 of our heaters, they showed a statistical significant reduction in blood pressure, which is still, every time I say that, I'm shocked, because before we started Sunlighten, I was over at Procter & Gamble, and I was specializing in the cardiovascular products on the pharmaceutical side. And I know that those companies spend millions and millions and billions of dollars trying to come up with medicine to control blood pressure. And here, we were able to do it in an easy way just by sitting in our product for 30 minutes, which is still, it's just fascinating to me, even after all these years. That we're able to help the heart that much. And we also know through studies that it helps with decreasing the lining, so it helps to increase blood flow and increase oxygenation to the tissues. There's also a study that was done with Sunlighten's product in Canada on weight loss and waist circumference reduction, so showing that we're able to reduce that belly fat. And there's a lot of benefits that separately on when you can reduce the belly fat, that changes the hormone levels, and that makes you have more energy and helps also with getting your body back to normal. There was also a study done at Auburn University with our 3-in-1 technology several years ago, and that was specifically relating to the agility and flexibility in the joint and tissues, looking at using our programs with the 3 different wavelengths on how do I recover the body as fast as possible. And if I'm not able to move well, or if I'm not as flexible, or if my body hurts, what can I do? And so they showed very quickly after using our 3-in-1 that they could get the body back to its normal state and increase flexibility and decrease pain and increase agility. So those are some of the studies that have been done with our product and shown a significant, result: weight loss, lowering blood pressure, muscle recovery, removing toxins.
Nice. And I know something else that I've seen in the medical news recently is a little bit more research about heat shock proteins and how they're beneficial. And they're slightly misnamed because they aren't just caused by heat, but at least from my research. So heat shock proteins, basically they chaperone other types of proteins and kind of guard those proteins from misassembling or mutating or folding improperly. Or in simpler terms, basically they protect cellular proteins from damage and mutation. So, and it seems that from my research, at least, things like exercise and sauna use, and ironically, even cold therapy can help optimize heat shock proteins. And I'm curious if you've come across any of this in the work you guys have done with Sunlighten.
Well, that's a great question. And I know that when we came out with the 3-in-1, we originally met Dr. Oz when he had us on the Oprah Winfrey Show as a result of the data with lowering blood pressure and increasing caloric burn. And he was really fascinated with the research that we had done on how we can help to boost the immune system, specifically with the mid-infrared wavelength and the mid-infrared and far-infrared working together. And so I do feel like there's a connection between the heat shock proteins and the immune system and helping the body fight disease. And because he had for a cold and flu, like in January, what are some ways to naturally and safely fight the cold and flu season? And I do feel that people, we work with a lot of corporations that put our products in, and one of the reasons they put our products in is to keep their associates, at work and to keep them healthy. So they're definitely, anecdotally, we haven't done the study specifically, but I feel like there's definitely a connection with boosting the immune system and Sunlighten's products and staying healthy. I know I myself, just on personal, as well as my kids, because they come in, to when I'm taking a session, as well as my husband. We all use it, and we all have a strong immune system.
Yeah, I think that's a benefit that definitely cannot be overstated, especially with the dawn of cold and flu season upon us right now. And just, especially in families, like I have 6 kids, and once somebody gets sick, if it spreads, the whole family's kind of down for the count. This podcast is brought to you by Genexa, a company pioneering over-the-counter medicine with a full line of homeopathic and regular over-the-counter medicines that work without the harmful dyes, additives, artificial sweeteners that are in many medicines. Founded by 2 dads on a mission to find better products for their own kids, Genexa uses a patented system to create their formulas without harmful additives or preservatives while maintaining the same active ingredients. Plus, their formula are all free of common allergens, which is really important in today's world. One example, they have a formula called Heartburn Fix. It works just like many over-the-counter heartburn relief products to provide fast relief for heartburn and indigestion, but without the dyes and preservatives that some other products contain. I wish I'd known about this one when I was pregnant with my first child, but I'm so glad that products like this are finally available. They also have other products for everything from sleep to colds to leg cramps and everything in between. You can shop their full line of organic and non-GMO medicines by going to genexa.com/wellnessmama and using the code wellness for 20% off of your order. Again, that's genexa.com/wellnessmama with the code wellness in all caps for 20% off. This episode is brought to you by Organifi, and I'm so excited to finally tell you about them because here's a confession. I have known about Organifi for a really long time, and even though so many of my friends and experts I trust rave about them, I never tried their stuff until recently because I thought, first of all, how can it actually be that good? Well, I tried it, and it turns out that not only is it that good, it's better than I expected. Organifi has green juice, red juice, which is an antioxidant red drink, and it's delicious, and a golden milk turmeric drink, along with a plant-based protein. Everything they have is completely organic, and they all actually taste good, unlike a lot of other green drinks and protein powders. I've especially been loving their red juice lately, especially at this time of year for immunity. It tastes amazing, and it has a blend of antioxidants from strawberries, cranberries, blueberries, pomegranates, and they also add in beets, cordyceps, reishi, rhodiola, and a lot more. So this particular blend is formulated to increase energy, boost metabolism, and reduce factors that lead to aging. Their green juice is minty and delicious, and I noticed it has almost 800 5-star reviews. You can check out those 2 products along with their whole suite of products and save 20% just by being a listener of the Wellness Mama podcast. Go to Organifi.com/Wellness Mama. That's ORGANIFI.com/Wellness Mama and use the code Wellness20 for 20% off. I guess it's somewhat complementary to sauna use, and it may not be something you're as familiar with, but I'm curious if you've come across any of the research of how cold therapy can it be complementary with heat therapy? I know there's a lot of people interested in that right now. People like Wim Hof talking about the benefits of cold. Is that something that can be used complementarily with sauna? I think it's called contrast therapy when they're used together. Have you guys tried that, or do you have any insight?
I don't have any insight. It is something that I have heard, and I've heard him specifically speak at Bulletproof Conference a couple of years ago. It is not something that I am intimately familiar with, so I can't share, any insights. Our insights are really all around the science behind the 3 different infrared wavelengths and how they can specifically work with the body.
Got it. Okay. And I know another question that I get often related to sauna use, especially talking about the infrared spectrums, is related to the EMF implications. That's something I've done research on, especially just in the home side and all the ambient EMFs that we're exposed to daily. I'm curious how the infrared spectrums fit into that, and what I know you guys have done some testing on this, so I'd love to hear the insights you have on the EMF issue when it comes to saunas.
Yes, this is something that's very important to us. And I know when I met you, you were talking about your commitments to EMF research and doing everything that you can to make sure and minimize that in your household. And I just have so much respect for that and how you do that. I think it's fantastic. And that's also the same vision that we have at Sunlighten. Even when we started, like way back in our basement, we were building these units with just only the safest materials and just taking every single step to minimize that output. And now we've taken it as far as, we send our heaters away. They get tested to make sure that there is minimal output. The way we do our wiring, every single part, all of our materials, everything is natural. We're a full service committed wellness company, and we live by our mission to leave, the world a healthier place, and we don't want to emit, anything that's harmful. So all of our products have the lowest available on the market, and to ensure that they do, we test them and take every step. And we're always looking, our signature and our solo, there's no level of, it's almost non-existent, 0.005. And so those are done, but we're always, any other products that we have, the ones with the 3 different wavelengths, we're always finding little tweaks to bring it down, even like 0.0, even like the smallest amount, it's worth doing it. And so we're constantly making those minor adjustments to make it non-existent.
That's awesome. I think it's going to be an increasingly important issue. I feel like as the research goes on, and I'm glad that you guys are already tackling that. So for people who are new to saunas, like we mentioned, there can be like some skin reactions if you're not used to it and your body's getting rid of a lot of stuff. I'm curious if there are some good guidelines for people who are just beginning with saunas to maximize the benefits and to like work up to it slowly. I'm guessing like exercise, it's maybe not something you jump into starting with an hour a day or anything.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm so close to it. Sometimes I forget, but whenever you say that, when I hear you say that, it brings me back to one of my first experiences when I was doing my Sunlighten solo. I did it immediately following a run, and I was like a little lightheaded. And so my tip is don't overdo it. There's a lot of people that just want, a little bit is good, so a lot of it is great. But when you're starting, it's intense. It is therapy, right? It's a healing wavelength that's going to transform your body. It's officially called, like how it works with the body is passive cardiovascular conditioning. So similar to active cardiovascular conditioning, you can overdo it, and so I would always advise people to start off, with 15 minutes and then work up to 40 minutes, and you can do it 40 minutes a day, every day. If you are doing active cardiovascular conditioning, if you're, doing exercise, then I would just be aware of how your body feels if you're doing both in the same day. And if you get lightheaded, obviously change, don't do it. That's the only, risk is just, overdoing it. And also the other thing to always do is hydrate. And I can't emphasize that enough. The more people I meet, the more I travel, I am just continually surprised actually by the little amount of water that people drink. And then they get in and, and they start to feel their head starts to get dizzy, and you need to take care of your body and hydrate. And when you're doing this, because this is intense, and remember, we're going deep and we're pulling out stuff, from the body. So you need to make sure that you're adequately hydrating to make sure you feel great.
Got it. And you mentioned working up to 40 minutes. Is there kind of any indication in the research on the optimal amount of time? Is that kind of the gold standard, eventually working up to the 40 minutes?
That was yes, the gold standard would be 40 minutes. For the first 10 years of our company, 30 minutes was the gold standard. And the more research we did, Katie, and this is all anecdotally, but we also have a business here. In addition to Sunlighten, we have a brick and mortar healing spa called Sunlight Day Spa, where it's focused on natural ways of healing. And of course, we have our Sunlighten units. And so we get it's been 10 years we've had that. So we have a lot of experience with customer feedback. And what we were noticing was at that first 20 minutes, it was kind of like that zone, that you get in. And so you want to stay in that zone for longer than 10 minutes, which would be the 30 minute. And so if you can stay in that and double it from 20 to 40, you're getting exponential benefits. No different than exercise when you start to work up to, if you're walking or if you're running or if you're lifting, anything, you want to start to increase, and especially when you get in that zone of effectiveness. And so 40 minutes is perfect.
Is it something that can be safely incorporated daily? Can it be a common daily practice for people who have a sauna?
Yes.
Awesome. And so you've mentioned in passing several of your different units and how they're different. Can you kind of take us through the different types that you have? I know I have your solo in my house, which I love because it's compact, but take us through the different ones and what they do, which spectrums they include.
Yes. So the Sunlighten Solo is one of my all-time favorites, and I love it for so many reasons. One is exactly what you said. It's portable, it's easy, it's compact. You can put it away if you want to. It's so effective and efficient, which is one of my favorite things. And I know yours from talking to you about your scheduling and how you manage your home schedule and business schedule, which I love. So I love the efficiency part. You get more bang for your buck with the Sunlighten Solo system, so it's two parts. So you have the Solo domes, which is what all of any study you see that's out there on the internet was done with the Sunlighten Solo. And it was done with only 5 of our patented far infrared heaters. And then several years after that, we added the pad that you have that has 4 additional ones. So that entire unit has 9 heaters. And again, you're getting 99% effectiveness in a compact space. So it's very intense and extremely efficient, and in my opinion, more efficient than some of the modular boxes, even our own Signature One, for example, because you're so close and you're so you're surrounding you, right, all the way around you. You have the heaters at the feet and the heaters underneath you and the heaters over you. Your head is out and you're breathing in fresh oxygen. And then you're sweating out all of the toxins and you feel restored afterwards. I just love that product. So that's the Sunlighten Solo system. And then we have the Signature series, which has the highest amount of far infrared on the market, same as the Solo. Both have the most amount of far infrared available today. And that's patented so that you're protected for that claim. I don't like to say something unless it's patented and protected. And the signature is, in a modular unit, we have 5 different sizes and lots of different options. I love the solo system myself, but if you want to take it and experience it with somebody else, the signature is a great option for that. We also have acoustic resonance therapy, which is a sound vibration therapy that you can add to the signature, and that helps with the brain waves and it helps to expedite your detoxification experience. That's something you don't have in the solo system today. We're still working on that part for the future. And then the next product is our 3-in-1 Impulse, and that has all 3 of the infrared spectrum, the wavelengths that we talked about. It has the most amount of far, it has the most amount of near in a separate heater, and then it has separate near infrared LEDs that we worked with some really smart scientists to develop which wavelength and the quantity of joules, and made sure that we produce the most effective near infrared on the market. So you get all 3 of those wavelengths, and then we have a control panel that is a smart control panel, and it's worked well to deliver 6 different programs. And so that way, when you're in there and you say, gosh, I really want to focus on my joint pain, we've put together a program that maximizes reduction of inflammation based on science. So you just press pain relief and it pulls up the different wavelengths. It pulses them at different levels. You receive different quantities and it pulls it back and then pulses it again, all to focus on inflammation. Same thing, we have a cardio program, we have a relaxation program, we have a weight loss and an anti-aging program, and then of course the pain relief. And that's all in the Impulse 3-in-1 series. So there's 3 really different options. And then for commercial use, we have this beautiful community unit that's huge, and we use it with a lot of fire stations because it's really large and you can have multiple people or businesses. But that's the landscape of all of the different units. So really, there's a choice for everyone. And even for some people, I know they just want to get started, and they don't want to, spend a lot of money. We have the solo pad. You can just buy that. And we have some carbonized bamboo towels that also emit infrared. And you can lie on the pad and you can roll yourself up in our carbonized bamboo towels and put those over you and get started, receiving at least 4 different heaters in, getting the wavelength into your body. And that's better than buying one of those, aluminum tents you see out there, or, there's just some products that just market themselves as infrared, but you're not receiving the quantity of far infrared that you need to transform the body. So it's better just to buy the solo pad and some carbonized bamboo towels than to spend on, something that's not going to detoxify you.
That's a good point. And I know that you guys talk about your EMF testing on your website, but that's one thing I've realized in the past. I've tested a lot of different saunas, and a lot of the tent type ones that you mentioned, they actually test really, really high for EMFs. And then you're also sitting in an aluminum BPA box, which isn't probably the best thing if you're trying to get rid of those compounds in your body. So I think that's a good point. And what I love about the mission and what you guys do, especially with catering to home use, is that this is something that some cultures have known for a really long time. I know in Finland, sauna use is built into the culture, and I think 3/5 or more of the entire population, they have saunas at their house. And it's one of the many reasons that Finland typically tests better than us in health metrics, and even their schools, they test better in education as well. But I love that you guys are trying to make this available in the US as well. So can you talk about the ways that you guys are seeing people be able to incorporate saunas into their home in different types of situations?
Yes. I mean, so we're doing everything we can. Part of our, mission is to connect, customers to Sunlighten for life and do whatever it takes to make sure that our customers are living a healthy life. And one of the ways to do that is, by adding any of our products into their home. All of our products, we have easy assembly. This is not And it can be really intimidating, especially, if you look at our website and you see some of the models that looks like, oh my gosh, first of all, I don't have the space, and then where would I put it? And then how am I going to put it together? And, I live on myself, or whatever the situation is. But all of our products, we have a patent on the assembly process. It's easy. It's magnetic, and it goes together like I call it adult Legos. You just put the base down, and then the walls are magnetized and put together real strong with a reinforced clips on the top, and then a real strong roof. And then we also have videos to help you put them together. And then, of course, we talked about the Sunlighten Solo system, that each dome alone weighs about 30 pounds. So it's lightweight. It's a much, better option, like you said, than some of those portable things you see on the internet that are out there. And then on that note, I do want to mention, when we talked about EMF, the other thing that's really important is the materials that we use. When you talk about you're heating up an environment, even though the level of heat we're using specifically is in the far infrared, and so the air isn't going to be as hot as it would be, you're still heating, the air. And so you really want to make sure you're heating the materials, right? And there's so many. In fact, the majority of products that are out there are imported, and we do import stuff too, but we own all of ours. And so we control everything. But a lot of the materials have plastics. There's a lot of off-gassing. When you turn it on, you can just smell, the synthetic part of the materials. And then you heat it. And I just can't even imagine how that is going to impact your body. I mean, it's going to go into your body, and it's totally doing the reverse effect of what you're trying to accomplish. So our materials, it's really important. I mean, our intentions behind every single element of our product is wellness. And so our carbonized bamboo fibers that we use to cover the heaters, protect, to make sure it's a natural material. Our wood is hypoallergenic and fragrance-free. Just everything we do is focused with wellness intentions. And so it's just really important that I express that, and your customers, your listeners know that. And if they ever have any questions about any of that, they can obviously feel free to contact me directly.
Awesome. And of course, links will be in the show notes, as well as links to different things that we've talked about. But where can people go to find out more about Sunlighten? And is there any kind of special, I'll make sure the links in the show notes, but special offer or anything for Wellness Mama listeners?
There is. So as far as where they can go, they can call us. That's usually the easiest, because a lot of times people want, we want to know what you're going through, right? I mean, we're in this for the big picture, and we're in this to make a difference. That's what drives us. So that's our why. Okay. So we are just not like that transactional site where it's like, okay, just, buy our product and be on your way. We really want to know what's going on in your life. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because we have so many different options, Katie, we want to make sure that, a lot of people don't need all three wavelengths, right? It's great that we have them, but a lot of people don't need that. So if you don't need that, we don't want you to, it costs more because you're getting 2 additional, wavelengths, and you're getting a lot of them. So if you don't need it, let's not do it. If we can just get you the pad and some bamboo carbon towels, we're going to save you a lot of money, and we're happy to do that. So my point of all of that is sometimes it's best to just talk over the phone versus, in email, because then you can get the tone and you can really understand somebody, and we can guide you on what's best for you. And so that our phone number here is 877-292-0020. And then it should prompt you when you dial that to talk to a specialist what that extension is. I believe off the top of my head, it's either 5 or 6. And so you call, or the email is, you can write me directly, which would be Connie@sunlighten.com. I'm happy to answer your emails. I can direct you to one of our specialists as well. As far as for your listeners, for Wellness Mama advocates, we want to reward you for following Katie. She's one of my favorites. And so we want to give you $200 additional savings off any of our products. And our goal is for you to be able to have them and use them And anything we can do to help you along that way, we're happy to do.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. And a final question I'd love to ask toward the end is somewhat selfish because I am an avid reader. I'm curious if there is a book or books that have really impacted your life. They don't necessarily have to be about what we've talked about today, but I just always love new book recommendations.
My books of choice right now are cookbooks. So one of the biggest cookbook that has impacted my life, and it does happen to be in a wellness way, is Ina Garten. Do you know who she is? She wrote the Barefoot Contessa cookbook. I don't know if you're familiar with that cookbook.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So that, since then, I've collected all of her cookbooks, but really changed my approach completely. I used to think that, you had to be gourmet and, a recipe had to be complicated and there had to be all these ingredients. And, it's actually the exact reverse, right? I mean, it's like the fewer ingredients, the better, because then you really get to taste what you're eating, and it's really changed. I found the Barefoot Contessa cookbook before I had my kids, but then it has changed my passion towards cooking and my involvement of my kids in cooking and having them in the kitchen and showing them that, when you're using fresh ingredients and you're buying the freshest things, it makes such a difference in how they taste. And, that now my kids are kind of growing up. They notice if we go someplace, they're like, Mom, this doesn't taste like it's fresh. Like, well, so it's kind of having a little bit of a, I shouldn't say adverse effect, but, they're becoming a little bit more particular, let's just say. But I love cookbooks in general. So I have a bunch more that I love, but when you use the word impact, when I talk about impact for me, that made a huge impact in my approach, how I shop, everything I choose to use in the kitchen. And you already know where, so it's not something that's new, but I love healthy eating. And healthy eating, it shouldn't taste bad, right? Like, it's a lot of times you think of healthy as like, oh, it's not, it doesn't have any flavor, or it's just like raw vegetables or whatever. In reality, it should taste good. And I think that that's something I'm very, very passionate about, is food in general, and really good, healthy food that tastes like food.
I love that. I think that really high quality food has the power to be so transformative, both for our body from a nutritional perspective, but also that time spent and the care taken in preparing it. And especially with those we love, can be so transformative for us as in community with other people, and just psychologically, it's so, I think, beneficial. And I love that you brought that up. I don't usually hear cookbooks on that recommendation. And I love that. Such a good.
I think that do you feel that, like, when you're tasting somebody's food, I started to notice the difference when you feel like somebody put a lot of love into it, or you feel like it was made to make it. Does that make sense? Like, I really feel like I notice a difference now in when somebody's making a dinner, and my kids will say this, and I mean, part of it is I've raised them, like I kiss the food, and, like I'm a little over the top and like, oh, I'm putting a hug in here, So, but I really feel like, literally, when I taste people's food, there's some dishes where I feel it has more love than others. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does make a huge difference, and you can actually taste that care and that time. And like in wine, they talk about that. Like, you can taste the vineyard, and you can taste the winemaker, and all those different aspects. And I think it applies to food as well. You can really get a lot from the food and from the atmosphere. And I have a few friends who are actual chefs too, and I can taste that passion and love they have for their craft in their food, and how much different it is than, like you said, something just kind of hastily thrown together with packaged food. It's a big difference for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you can taste that too. That makes me happy.
Awesome. Well, Connie, I cannot believe our hour has already
goodness,
by, but I really appreciate you. It did. But I'm so appreciative of you and your time and being here. This is super fun. And I know that I get a lot of questions about saunas, and I love that you, I think, tackled all of them today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to seeing you sometime soon. And one of these days, for your listeners, I'm going to reach out and interview Katie. So stay tuned. So then you can listen, to that interview, because I just think she is, you are phenomenal and an inspiration, not only to moms, but just to people in general. And I love the work that you're doing. I want to share as much about your mission and vision as I can.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for listening. And I hope you'll join me on the next episode of the Wellness Mama podcast. If you're enjoying these interviews, would you please take 2 minutes to leave a rating or review on iTunes for me? Doing this helps more people to find the podcast, which means even more moms and families can benefit from the information. I really appreciate your time, and thanks as always for listening.